So, actually, I'm gonna try to give this talk. It's been done on a short notice because this is actually a 45-minute talk I have that I compressed into 7 minutes. So it's gonna be interesting. Let's try. So I'm not gonna be introducing myself. I'm just gonna start with introducing the talk itself. So the title is Fullstack Can Be Fun Again. And what I think is that at some point, like in the last 5 or 7 years, we made it unnecessarily complex. And I think that we are now going back and reducing a bunch of complexity. But first, let's discuss what we are talking about. So what's full stack? I think in my definition, it's when you write bugs that run on the server and on the user's browser. But this is the GPT definition, everyone asks ChatGPT, but I don't agree really with this definition. It's overly complex. I think something you could say is you write some business logic that often talks to the database, and then you have some client-side interactivity, and you do both of those things. And what do I mean by fun and easy? I think we all remember that when we started doing development, either it was Django, Rails, or PHP, or whatever, it was really easy to add new things, just query this, run this, so on. And then we kind of made it really complex, and now we're going back. So this is a great example. This is an example of a PHP app. This is something that I wrote 10 years ago when I started, and probably a bunch of you also wrote something similar. You could just query your database and then render the post. It's easy as that. And then but how do you add interactivity? Most of the time, you would do something like this with jQuery. You would add a bunch of CDNs. Then that would kind of collide because some plugin was colliding with something else. Nothing would work. And no one writes code like this anymore. I mean, this guy does, and it makes 30,000 euros a month. But it doesn't matter. No one else does it like that. So what did we, as front-end developers, do? We saw that Facebook was using GraphQL and React and said, hey, that's an amazing for my to-do app that has 2 users. So what we did was we would write a server with all of the schema, then we would write the query on the client, then we would run the generate, it would generate some TypeScript, then you would import it in the app, add a bunch of states, so on and so forth. And what did we end up doing? Writing 5 times more code? For what? But the DX was great. So we kind of stuck with it because you could do client-side stuff, and the DX with autocomplete and type safety and so on, it was kind of nice. But still, it was so complex compared to what we were doing before. This is the meme that I think perfectly explains what we're doing. Why is front-end complex? Because we made it complex. We wanted to have it complex, and we just ended up doing this. After kind of this period, in the last 5 years, we started doing meta frameworks, which were wrong thing. Meta frameworks. So we started doing meta frameworks with kind of would encapsulate both the server and the client, and you could very easily do those things. But most of these were just building on these bad patterns we kind of picked up with SPAs and GraphQL. Even though GraphQL is great for 10% of use cases, we were using it for 85% of use cases, which is a problem. So there's been an evolution, I would say, to these full stack frameworks with Blitz and T3 specifically in the TRPC area, where they kind of evolved around this SPA approach and made it so much easier to work with. But still, that was a bunch of code. I think the revolution came in the form of app router and also Astro, but I'm going to be talking about specifically with the Next.js app router, because if you take a look at this, it's the same as the PHP example I showed you. You query the data, and you just render it. But the most magical part about this, not only do you get better DX in general, is that interactivity is 1 file away. You create a new file, add use client at the top, and just import it. With the old PHP model, you would have to write your own scripts and then load them somehow and figure out, and you could define a variable in one file that would collide with the other one, and changing the window objects for PHP plugin, for the bunch of jQuery plugins, and nothing would work and everything would break. It was really annoying when I used to do that. So with the app router, we kind of got the best of both worlds. You could do server really easily. You could add new things very easily, but the DX was great. Everything was type safe. You can just import and everything. But the discourse on Twitter in the past year or so since they launched it has pretty much been this. Either I don't like Next 13 or React server components, or they're changing, or I hate the triangle company, I like Netlify, or whatever. My take on all of this is I agree that their launch when they started was kind of flawed, the docs weren't great, so on and so forth. But if this is your take, I think that you should try it again with an open mind, and you'll realize that now that they polished it, it's one of the best and the fastest way to build a full stack app if your backend and frontend are both in TypeScript. The most important thing I think you should take from all of these slides, not only mine but others, is that you should take all of this with a grain of salt. In my case, probably with a truck full of salt, because I'm telling you to go rewrite your app, but I actually don't think you should be doing that. If you're starting a new app, you should be exploring other things. If you want to migrate to the app router for the nice layout patterns or whatever, and you want to move stuff over and you want to explore, go for it. But most people said like, oh, that's a new version of Next.js, let's just upgrade everything. And then nothing worked out of the box, and they're like, this is horrible, this is terrible, like, yo, the React team is now in Vercel, they're breaking React, it's no longer my React, and so on. But like, actually it is. You were just using it wrong because at the time, there were no good ways to use it because the docs were bad and like they had edge cases and so on. So what I'm saying is that in the end, it doesn't even matter what you're using, you just need to ship. Just if you have an app that works, ship that. If you're starting something new, I implore you to try out either Astro or Next 13, depending on how much React you want in your life. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Just ship it and don't over-engineer your apps. I've seen that a bunch, and you should not be doing that. So yeah, that's it. This is the link to the slides. And yeah.